Welcome to Right versus Left News, your daily briefing on the stories that matter, told from both sides of the aisle. I'm your AI host, Chris, and each day I bring you the most important political and cultural news, with perspectives from conservative and progressive voices. No spin, no agenda, just the facts and the opinions that shape our national conversation. Let's dive in. Here's your quick rundown for Friday, February 27th, 2026. Hillary Clinton spent 6 hours under oath yesterday in Chappaqua, and Bill Clinton is set to sit today in the House's Epstein inquiry. Abroad, Pakistan launched airstrikes on Kabul after reported cross-border attacks. The defense minister called it open war. At home, the average 30-year mortgage rate dipped below 6% for the first time since 2022. In tech and defense, AI maker Anthropic is pushing back on a Pentagon demand to loosen its model safeguards. And in media, Netflix bowed out of a potential Warner Brothers Discovery deal, leaving Paramount Skydance in pole position, though regulators aren't done. That's the slate, as reported by outlets including the Associated Press, The Washington Post, Fox News, and Barron's. Before we jump into today's stories, a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting Right versus Left News. Now let's get to the headlines. First up, the Clintons' depositions in the Epstein probe. Here's what happened. Hillary Clinton testified yesterday in a closed-door House oversight deposition in Chappaqua, New York. She said she has no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's or Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes and doesn't recall meeting Epstein. Reports from the Associated Press and the Washington Post say the session was briefly disrupted after Representative Lauren Boebert shared an unauthorized photo, and Democrats pushed for a quick release of the transcript. Bill Clinton is scheduled to testify today, also in Chappaqua, after weeks of brinkmanship over potential contempt threats. Fox News previously reported the dates and the shift to New York. On the right, the emphasis is accountability. Republicans say the committee is finally compelling sworn answers on flight logs, donations, and what they argue was a long downplayed social network that enabled abuse. Expect calls to release videos and transcripts and to chase any leads, including possible overlaps with the Clinton Foundation. On the left, coverage frames this as mostly political theater. Democrats say there's no evidence tying Hillary Clinton to Epstein's crimes and want equal scrutiny of Donald Trump's allies, along with a full release of Justice Department files on Epstein. They also slammed the leaked photo as a rules breach that fuels conspiracies. Next, Pakistan strikes Kabul amid talk of open war. Here's what happened. Pakistan carried out airstrikes early Friday in Kabul, Kandahar, and Paktia after reports of cross-border attacks that seized border posts. Casualty claims vary sharply. Pakistan's defense minister called it open war, while Afghan officials reported civilian injuries near Torkham. The Guardian, Al Jazeera, and the Associated Press described this as the worst flare-up since a Qatar-mediated ceasefire, a dangerous turn for a region already strained by militant violence and refugee flows. On the right, analysts say Islamabad is finally hitting Taliban-harbored militants, and that US partners need to show resolve against groups like the TTP and ISIS-K. The view is that pressure works, and Washington should back counter-terror operations while protecting American assets. On the left, voices stress humanitarian risks and escalation spirals, warning that tit-for-tat strikes and contested casualty figures can mask civilian harm. They urge urgent diplomacy, UN monitoring, and stronger safeguards for refugees at the border. Reporting highlights the fog of war and contradictory accounts. Now, mortgage rates finally fall below 6%. Here's what happened. Freddie Mac's latest survey puts the average 30-year fixed mortgage at 5.98%, the first sub-6 reading since September 2022. The Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, and Barron's say the move tracks a lower 10-year Treasury yield and could give the spring market a psychological lift, though inventory is tight and prices remain high. Fox Business also notes the milestone and the chance that more buyers will test the waters. On the right, the take is that cooling inflation and steadier policy are starting to relieve buyers. proof, they argue, that pro-growth moves, including on energy, are easing price pressures and helping families get back into the market. On the left, outlets caution that rates alone won't fix affordability. With limited supply, rising insurance and tax costs, and many owners locked into older sub-4% loans, the housing logjam won't break without more building, zoning reforms, and renter supports. Good news, but not a cure-all. We'll be right back with more of today's news after this brief message.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks again to our sponsors. Now back to the news, back to tech and defense. Anthropic versus the Pentagon over AI guardrails. Here's what happened. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei publicly refused a Pentagon ultimatum to allow any lawful use of Claude, including scenarios the company bars, like mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. The Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal report that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened to cancel a $200 million contract, invoke the Defense Production Act, or designate Anthropic a supply chain risk. Anthropic says those threats are contradictory and that it's willing to keep working with the Defense Department, just not at the expense of two core safeguards. On the right, defense-friendly voices argue the military needs full-spectrum access to cutting-edge AI to deter adversaries, and that with lawful oversight, vendors shouldn't unilaterally veto warfighting uses. Some even say a supply chain risk label is warranted if a contractor can yank capabilities mid-mission. On the left, supporters say Anthropic is drawing a necessary line, warning that autonomous weapons and expanded surveillance threaten civil liberties and strategic stability. They want Congress, not contract terms, to set democratic red lines for military AI. Finally, Netflix bows out as Paramount moves on Warner Bros. Discovery. Here's what happened. Netflix said it won't raise its bid for Warner Bros. Discovery, clearing a potential path for Paramount Skydance's sweeter offer at about $31 a share. The Associated Press and the Washington Post say the door is now open, but not yet closed. California's Attorney General says it's not a done deal, and antitrust scrutiny is intensifying. The Guardian notes that critics, including Senator Elizabeth Warren, warn the tie-up could concentrate too much cultural and news power under one roof. On the right, market-friendly voices see scale as survival in a streaming war dominated by big tech, arguing that a Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery combination could keep legacy studios competitive, sustain theaters, and deliver clearer bundles to consumers. Business coverage highlights shareholder value and speed to close. On the left, media reform advocates warn about consolidation, fewer buyers for independent creators, newsroom influence risks with CNN and CBS under the same umbrella, and higher prices for viewers. California's investigation, along with an expected Justice Department review, could force divestitures or tougher conditions. Quick recap. In the last 24 hours, the Clintons' depositions moved forward. Pakistan's strikes escalated a dangerous border conflict. Mortgage rates finally printed a 5-handle. An AI ethics standoff hit the Pentagon, and Hollywood's next mega merger took a big step, but faces a regulatory gauntlet. We'll keep tracking the facts and the arguments from left and right so you can decide where you land. That's it for today's episode of Right versus Left News. Remember, understanding both sides isn't about picking a team, it's about being informed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join us tomorrow for another balanced look at the day's biggest stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.